of how to combine React components with a D3 chart on the same page. I will post all of the code and the React project for you to play with. So we've got two regions of the screen. One is owned by React, one is owned by D3. But you can see that as I move over the chart, the React portion of the screen is showing the mouse over hint, and I can click to change the data in the chart. It's updating the controls in the React section, but then I can also make changes in the React section which cause the chart to update. So we've got two-way interaction. We've got React changing the chart, and then we've got D3 changing the React controls, which causes the chart to refresh. So let's look at it's very simple. I'm going to take you through all the steps of it. So what we have is we've got an index page where we import our D3 chart. We're using V3. There's a file that I call global.js, and then chart.js is just our, that's the core chart that we're using that uses the D3 library to do all of the graphics. And then within that page, we've got the div where React is injected into the page, and then we've got the div where the D3 SVG document is rendered. And within global, we'll look at all of this, but we basically got two collections in global that we use so that JavaScript can call React and React can call JavaScript. So let's jump into index.html. So here's our index.html. We're importing the global.js, which I mentioned. There's our v3 of D3, our chart file. And then here you can see where we've got the React root, where React is injected. And then we've got the chart div. This is just here so that you can see the different regions of the screen. So I'll delete this because it's going to get in our way later. So if I save that, you'll see that this label has gone now, and then we'll get rid of this one too. So if we look at global.js, it's very, very simple. It just has two JavaScript objects. One is called React functions. So these are React functions that JavaScript can call. And then we have JavaScript functions, which are there for React to call things on the JavaScript side. Next in here we have chart.js. So this is our D3. This will look very familiar for those of you that know D3. And the first thing we're doing is we're adding update chart into our JavaScript functions. So we're doing that so that React can call window.javascript functions.updateChart. This will look very familiar to you that are familiar with D3. We're actually doing a chord chart here. The interesting parts of this are where we get to the click, where someone clicks on an arc. And then we also have the mouse over. So when someone mouses over a path on the chart, these call two just straight JavaScript functions on the page, arc click and path mouse over, and these functions are here. So this performs the mouse over. We get some information about exactly what the mouse is over, and then we call a React function called chart mouse over, and we log it in the console. And then when the user clicks, similar thing, we get some information about what the user has clicked on. And then we're going to call one of the JavaScript functions that's in window.react function. And if we turn on the JavaScript console, here you can see the mouse over event. So you can see that we're calling window.react functions.chart mouse over, and we're passing in bars and east. Then we passed in cookies and east, and you can see that here, cookies and east. And then when I click, say I'll click on cookies, you can see that we're calling React function react.update chart to get new data to redisplay. This React region is getting in the way, so let's just remove that. You'll see that's in our area there. Okay. So now it's much cleaner and we can see everything that's going on. So here we can see in the console where we're calling React functions from chart.js. And then if I say change from over to bars, here you can see now in the React code for the data source, we're calling update chart to update the D3 chart. So it's very simple, very clean on the JavaScript side. So now let's look at the React side of things. Our index.js is very simple. We're just rendering the app into our React root. So if you remember in our index.html, we've got the React root where all of the React stuff is injected. And then we've got the D3 chart where the D3 chart is injected. I forgot to show you that, but if we go back to chart.js, you'll see that what we do is we inject the D3 chart into the node called D3-chart, which is this node here. So anyway, so back to the React side of things. So we're rendering the app into the React root node. The app is quite simple. We're using our data source, what we're using to load the data. And then here's where you see we've got the header. So we've got the region item selection, the category item selection, the values, and then the hint. So you can see these on the page. We've got the region selection, the category selection, the values, and then the mouse over hint. So these are all very simply laid out in our app. If we go and look, say, probably the interesting one is item selection and then the value hint. So let's look at the item selection. So this is a D3 component that's going to render our select object. So it's rendering our, it's generating our drop-down list. You can see we're adding the all option. And then you can see that when this changes, we're calling our onChange event, which is here. We get information about what the user wants to do. And then you can see we're calling our update function to our React function to update the data. But the interesting thing in here is that we register this function with window.react functions. So the way that the D3 charts, when I click on East over here, it's actually calling the function in this React component exactly as if the user had made a selection in here. So you can see that when the user changes the select control, we call onChange event. onChange event just calls onChange with the column and the value. And onChange is what we've registered with React functions. So the chart and so the D3 chart, when they click on it, and the drop-down selection in the React component both end up calling this same function, passing in the column and the value that the user has selected. And then we go ahead and update the data. The other interesting one is the value hint. So this is where we are constructing the hint that's going in here. So we've got a string that we format with the measure. So right now it's sales for carat in East. I can change that to quantity. And now you'll see that it's changed. We no longer have dollar signs, and we're looking at quantity for cookies in Los Angeles, bars in Los Angeles, etc. The way that works is we have a D3 component that replaces the region, category, the measure, and the value in a nicely formatted string. And then we just return that as the hint to the user, and that gets displayed here. Again, what we're doing is we're registering our chart mouse over React function with window.react functions. So that's just going to call here. It's going to pass in the region, the category, the measure, and the value, which is the region. So we've got the measure, we've got the product category, we've got the region, and we've got the value. So all of this is being passed in to this component, this React component, and you can see that we're registering that as chart mouse over. If we go back to our chart object here, you can see that when the user moves the mouse over a portion of the chart, we're calling window.react functions chart mouse over, passing in the product, the category, the measure, and the value. So that's going to directly call this function right here. We don't need to bind it. We don't need to do any of that. We don't need to bind the function to the object. That's not necessary using this technique. And then the other thing that we haven't looked at yet is the data source object. Here I'm just selecting different pre-existing data files. It's not using a live server on the back end, just to make it easy for you to take the React project as a whole and just run it without relying on anything on the server side. So what we're doing here is we're basically we're generating the file name that we're going to load. And if you look into, we basically just load up one of these JSON files, depending exactly what the user has chosen to do. But that's all this file is doing. It basically ends up loading you can see it's loading a JSON file with the correct region, category, and measure that the user has asked for. We use fetch. Once we've got the data, we end up calling the JavaScript function update chart, and we pass in the JSON object that we loaded from this URL. And so if you remember JavaScript functions.update chart, if we go back to our JavaScript functions, we've got our JavaScript functions here, and at the very top of our chord chart, we registered update chart as a JavaScript function that React can call, and so we are directly calling that function right here and passing in the data that it expects. So as you can see, it's a very simple process. In global.js, as we load up our JavaScript files, we add in JavaScript functions that React can call, and then our React components, as they load into the page, they add functions into React functions for the JavaScript to call. So by the time the page is loaded, both the React components and the pure JavaScript have registered functions for the other technology to call. And so what we end up with is a nice interaction. It's very smooth, it's very clean. You really can't tell what is React and what is D3 on here. They're working very nicely and cleanly together, both controlling the chart. React displaying the mouse over hint, handling the loading of the data for the chart to redisplay. So I'm going to post all of this onto my blog, and I will add a link to my blog. The blog will have a post describing what I've just told you, and it will have a zip file with all of the React files that you need to be able to run this locally on your setup. Hope you enjoyed it. Leave any comments if you want. If there's anything else you want me to prototype or demonstrate, just let me know. Thanks for watching. Bye.